That's right. You're listening to another episode of the co-main event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists, and for the last 13 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. And Ben, UFC 321 was this past weekend, and I have to say, I feel like you and I underestimated the heavyweight division because we sat here last week on this very show talking about how the worst thing for the UFC heavyweight division would be if Ciryl Gane won the fight
Yeah.
against Tom Aspinall. I may have, in fact, invoked the perennially shitty status of the heavyweight division to say that might happen. I might have even invoked the long-standing heavyweight curse to say that might happen. And brother, we did not know the half, and I feel like we should have known better. I feel like the heavyweight division, we should have known that the heavyweight division would and could one up us here. That it basically would hear us talking and be like, oh, you think it would be bad if Ciryl Gane won? Hold my fucking beer.
Yeah.
Because this was a disaster, man.
That one's on us. That's on us. It was fucking arrogant. It was foolish of us to sit around here saying, here's the worst thing that could happen at heavyweight. One guy wins. Like that. We ought to know better, damn it. There's no excuse because we've been at this a long time.
Yeah.
We've seen what heavyweight can do. And then you know what? If you're talking about the state of heavyweight and what this card did to or said about it, you could probably just look beyond the main event. And there's a lot of soul searching that needs to be done over there heavyweight. Because I sent you a text on Saturday morning when this early fight card, you had some money down on the Beast Boy.
Well, let's say it was a flyer.
Okay,
right?
No, I'm not saying that.
Let's not make it sound like I rolled in here with some metrics, some analytics, and I was like, I think Chris Barnett could well win this fight. I rolled in here and I was like, if you're going to give me plus 380 in a shitty ass heavyweight fight, I'm gonna take it.
Well, and you just wanted to have some money down on Chris Barnett because he's a delight and a joy to have around. This wasn't Chad Dundas's lock of the week or anything like that. I'm not trying to say that, but I texted you 9:38 a.m. on Saturday right after that fight was over, where I says condolences to you and the Beast Boy. You replied, it doesn't get any more heavyweight than that. Then in a follow-up text said, this might be the most heavyweight scorecard you can have too. 29-26, 29-27, 29-27. That's a scorecard where nobody won.
Yep. I stand by that.
And see, the foolish man might have looked at that and be like, well, that's as bad as heavyweight's going to get today. Nope. You had Alexander Volkov and Jailton Almeida go out there and make a mockery of the top five, essentially. Then you had your heavyweight title main event just end in an epic case of blue balls and poked eyes. Just reminds you, you think you've seen the ways this sport can break your heart, hurt your feelings, and insult you. And it always got another trick up the sleeve.
Yeah. If you don't know what we're talking about, you must be living under an MMA cave, but the heavyweight title fight between Tom Aspinall and Ciryl Gane at UFC 321 ended in a no contest due to an accidental eye poke by Ciryl Gane 4 minutes and 35 seconds into the first round. And as you might imagine, we got a lot of mail on this and other topics from UFC 321. So we're going to spend as much time today as we can going through those emails to talk as much as we can about as many aspects as we can about this event. Ben, you know where they were definitely hoisting a few pints while watching Big Tom and Ciryl over the weekend?
Tom's local, whatever pub he goes to up in Manchester. Probably something called like the Crown and Frog or something.
Say that again. Manchester? One more time.
Manchester.
That's terrible. I regret now that I asked you to do that again. But you're probably right. They probably were. But I was talking about the Arlington Tap House in Gladstone, Oregon. It's owned by the big homie Ray, a longtime CME listener and Patreon patron. Nailed it. They're always showing the fights down there. Football, they probably got the World Series on right now. Hell, maybe even some crooked-ass NBA games backed by La Cosa Nostra. Gambling skills.
You're going to talk about my Manchester. You're going to say La Cosa Nostra.
Yeah.
Like you're a
La
fucking
Cosa Nostra.
Italian waiter.
Forget about it. The best part is, if you go down there wearing any piece of CME merchandise, Ray will pour your first beer for half off.
You know what, though? I'll bet $500,000 of Chauncey Billups' money that they don't have food trucks up in there.
Oh, but they do. They got food trucks, wine, cocktails. Did we mention all the UFC events on TV? It's all right there at the Arlington Tap House, located at 140 West Arlington in Gladstone, Oregon. You can also find them online at 140westarlington.com. Tell them that Chad and Ben sent you. All right, let's get into some of this listener mail because we got a lot. These first two, I'm going to read them together because they're kind of about the same thing, and I think it's probably a thing we can all agree on. First one came to us from Zach Lemon on Patreon, who wrote, I'm going to get back on my soapbox and say that we just shouldn't have unintentional eye pokes. It's your job, Ciryl Gane, to control your fingers, and if somebody doesn't want to proceed through the fight with even slightly compromised vision because you cheated, then you lose the fight. Then we got this one from Daniel Alfredson on Patreon, who wrote, intentional or not, and if the promoter/athletic commission continued to do nothing about eye pokes, perhaps the only way to handle these is to actually penalize the guilty party, either by a point deduction or DQ. You have to be realistic about these things. I believe that last line is a reference to the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. In any case, yeah, but we've been talking about this so long. I'm exasperated, man, because once again, you had a situation where Ciryl Gane, the offending party, speaking of which, I can't believe we're going to let Tito Ortiz hijack the Ciryl Gane discourse by making us say Ciryl Gane or Ciryl Gane or whatever it is at this point. I can't believe it.
He's still out there doing it.
He's still got it. This is yet another instance where Ciryl Gane, the offending party, sticks his fingers second knuckle deep in both of Tom Aspinall's eyes at the same time.
Bowling balled that man.
And yet, in the immediate aftermath, a lot of people out here in this world somehow are blaming Tom Aspinall for this shit. We've been having this conversation for a decade, that in this instance, maybe you went a little bit too far because you caused it to be a no contest, but generally speaking, the best thing that you can do in an MMA fight is cheat. Kick a dude in the balls, poke him in the eye, do whatever you got to do, because not only are you not going to get penalized, but the guy who got fouled is the one who's going to look like the pussy. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be booing him. Everybody online. Oh, he quit. All this other stuff. John Jones probably going to send a mean tweet about him. That's Ciryl Gane's the one who fucking cheated, man. How are we going to say this about Tom Aspinall?
And that is the thing, is that almost all the discourse afterwards was focused on Tom Aspinall and not on the guy who did the thing that created this situation in the first place. And especially when you look at the replay, the really slow motion replay, where, as you said, he's full Three Stooges on that shit. Got a finger on each eye. And it seems like there's at least enough of a moment where you ought to be able to feel that you got your fingers out and they are touching the guy's eye, and it's still continuing to go in. And you can see the tips of like at least one finger disappear into the eye. That's crazy. That's a fucking eye gouge at that point. And I do agree that if we're just going to be out here being like, all right, we told you the rules in the dressing room. They weren't new rules. It's the same rules you've been fighting under. We went over it with you. We talked about it. You went out there in the first round and you did something that was against the rules. You did it. I agree that we need to move away from this idea of intentional versus unintentional eye poke. How many intentional eye pokes have we ever seen where we're like, that guy was like, I'm gonna poke this guy in the eye, and he did it? It doesn't matter. If you're going out there and you're gouging a guy's eyes, I don't really want to get into what was in your heart when you did that. It doesn't fucking matter.
Of your character.
Right. If you commit a foul, as everybody agrees Ciryl Gane did, and that foul causes the end of the fight, that should be a disqualification, man. I don't understand, especially like when we're doing it this way, do the no contest, nobody's satisfied, everybody's going to blame the guy who got fouled. I understand that we don't want to give people an incentive to not fight. As you've said before, as we've talked about, one of the reasons that cheating works so well in this sport is because when there's a stoppage due to a foul, everybody just wants to get the fight started again as soon as possible. That's what the fans want, it's what the officials want, it's what the, especially the other fighter wants. Everybody just has that built-in mechanism that says like, are you okay? Please say you're okay so we can continue this thing. And then they want to get going again. But if we create this situation where there's no real consequences for breaking a rule in a way that hurts the other person and makes the other person less able to fight, then you would be a fucking idiot not to poke somebody in the eye every single time you go out there.
Yeah.
Like that stat that we heard before, Lauren Murphy talked about from the refereeing and judging course that she took, where they said a fighter who pokes their opponent in the eye in the first round goes on to win the fight 74% of the time. Now, who knows exactly how accurate that stat is, but that's crazy, especially when you see that, hey, maybe you'll have a point deducted. Probably not, though, on the first time. Probably not. You'll just get a warning. You might even be able to do it again after that and not get a point taken away, as we've seen. And you will definitely hurt their chances of winning the fight. People, a lot of the discourse I've heard around the Tom Aspinall thing afterwards suggests to me that people have never been poked in the eye. Because if you've been poked in the fucking eye, whether, by doing, actual combat sports, I've been poked in the eye doing jujitsu and shit. I've been poked in the eye changing a toddler's diaper. And it doesn't
razor
matter.
Fingers.
Those little razor blade, tiny little sharp ass fingernails.
Babies, they just have little tiny X-Acto knives on the ends of their fingers, right in your eyeball. And
I'll tell you what, you're not okay right after that. Your vision is compromised, especially if you get poked in the eye. I got poked in the eye once, totally accidentally doing jujitsu, where a guy was trying to reach up to fight the hands on like a choke, and just reached up and finger went right in my eye. And the rest of that day, my vision was not 100%, and it fucking sucked. And you're asking him to just blink it free, put a towel on his eye, and then within 5 minutes turn around and go back out there where a trained heavyweight professional fighter is going to be throwing punches at his head. Like, his chances got worse, no doubt about it. And especially when it's an eye poke that's that bad, like, it'd be pretty stupid to go out there and fight, because for one thing, you got a lot riding on this. You're a heavyweight champion. Also, you could just have something really bad happen to you, health-wise. Guy can just go out there and knock you out really bad. All that shit can absolutely happen. And we're going to sit here and be like, don't do it again, Ciryl. Like, that's what was going to happen. If we were able to restart that fight, that's 100% what's going to happen. We're going to give him a warning, tell him to put his fingers away. And I kind of like the point that Jim Miller made, where he was just like, hey, look, if it's just a thing that is going to happen when you're in the cage sometimes, then why do all these guys, and he named like himself, but a few other people who have a ton of fights and a ton of octagon time, why don't we also have a ton of eye pokes? Like, we're not doing it. It is an act that the fighter is doing. It is not an inevitability. And that is a thing that I think that we have ignored for way too long.
And this wasn't the first time in this fight that Ciryl Gane reached out and shoved Tom Aspinall back by his face. He did it like 2 other times within this very short fight. And I don't know if he's just trying to use his reach advantage to keep Tom Aspinall away from him, but like, this was not the first time in this fight that he put his palm fully on Tom Aspinall's face and shoved him away with it. Like right there, you should at the least get a warning just for doing that. Just that should give you a warning. And man,
I think he might have been warned at some point about having his fingers out.
You just got to start penalizing people, man. Like I feel like you should warn them that you're going to take a point, even if there is no eye poke. If you're out there, Sir Lancelot, with your fingers straight out like that, it's ridiculous.
It also just seems like that's what the conversation in the dressing room is for. Those are the warnings. When we're explaining to you and we're telling you, here's what you can't do, here's what I'm looking for, that's the warning right there. And so when you go out there and you do it, we should just treat it as a foul. Especially, I know the referees don't want to be a deciding factor. They don't want to be involved in that kind of way. But if we were to just kind of standardize it where, hey, look, if there's a foul, we'll look at the replay, we will confirm that there was a foul. We don't need to get into motivations. We don't need to try to figure out what each person was thinking when they committed these fouls. If we just make it like, hey, you kicked him in the groin. I saw you kick him in the groin. That's a point. You poked him in the eye. That's like, if we just did that shit, then maybe we make some headway. Right now, the thing is, we are trying nothing. Yeah. This has been an issue for a long time. We've seen it affect multiple fights. We have this conversation every time. We had it when, Song Yadong and Henry Cejudo had that fight. We'll have it every once in a while. And then we just go back to doing nothing. We've not made any changes. Even when the UFC tried the thing with the gloves, they didn't even seem to take into account trying to change the gloves to limit eye pokes. They more or less admitted that when they rolled out those new gloves and then abandoned them because depending on who you ask, either John Jones didn't like them or the logos wouldn't stick. Whatever it was. And at this point, part of the double-edged sword of the UFC having basically rubber stamp power with a lot of these state athletic commissions is that we should be looking at the UFC and saying, what are you doing about it? You know how for a long time, UFC executives wanted to have it both ways where they are running this sport, they're all about it until there's some criticism and then, hey, we're regulated by the government. It's not up to us. But you're running events at these places that don't have real commissions. You can get the actual real commissions to do basically anything you want, anytime you want. So at this point, it is kind of on the UFC. You got to do something. And the fact that you're content to lay back and let this keep happening just kind of signals that you don't give a fuck.
Speaking of which, this question came in from Devin Scott, who wrote, so Dana White fired off another one of his autopilot takes. Quote, Ciryl Gane had Tom Aspinall bloodied up and Tom didn't want to continue in the fight. So the rematch is very interesting. Like, come on, man. Aspinall didn't, quote, not want to continue because he got his feelings hurt. He was blinded. Asking him to push through that is like picturing a chef getting pepper sprayed right in the face mid-shift and being told to finally dice a tray of shallots. Yeah, technically he could keep going, maybe walk away with all 10 fingers, but it's not exactly what you'd call an advisable move, right? It's the same recycled Dana promo spin. To act like a guy being temporarily blinded in a fist fight is somehow a character flaw. If there was someone new running the UFC, would it actually be different? Or is that just the inevitable fate of every promoter to eventually run entirely pre-programmed sound bites? Now, regardless of Dana White's take on this, should we do a rematch? Like, I feel like we were tempting the gods the first time that we put this together. Did you come away from this more interested in seeing Ciryl Gane and Tom Aspinall fight again just because Ciryl Gane was doing better than we thought he would the first couple minutes? Because I got to be honest, I came out of this just being like, shut it down. Just on to the next one, frankly.
Okay, but the problem is, what is the next one?
Yeah, there's nobody. If not John Jones, then there's nobody.
Yeah, and if you were looking at a situation where you're going, well, hey, guys like Jailton Almeida and Waldo Cortez Acosta they're kind of as far down as you can go in the top 10 before you reach somebody Tom Aspinall hadn't fought yet. Jailton Almeida looked like garbage, lost to Alexander Volkov. there's no pressing business that you could move on to. How you take this Dana White quote depends really on how generous you want to be, I guess. Is he saying, hey, here's my way of selling you the rematch by saying like, oh, hey, Ciryl Gane did better than everybody thought. And maybe Tom Aspinall was surprised by that. So we book a rematch, and suddenly you guys were saying you didn't care about this fight. Now it's an interesting, compelling fight with a backstory. Like, is he just going into promoter mode, or is he going into just Dana White seems to constantly love to unpromote his own fighters, talk about how they don't want to fight, they're not that tough, they're not that great all the time. He loves doing shit like that.
Yeah.
Counterproductive for the promoter to be talking about how the heavyweight champion of his organization didn't want to fight and found a way out of there. To me, I got really mad yesterday as I was sitting writing a column and thinking about all these people just being like having this argument about whether Tom could have continued. It doesn't matter. First of all, because yeah, obviously he could have continued. He could have that eye blinded permanently and he could continue to fight. He could have both eyes blinded. He could physically continue to fight. It'd be fucking stupid though, because he can't goddamn see. Being able to goddamn see, Chad, is right up there with being able to move in things that seem to play a heavy role in your success or failure in a prize fight.
Yeah.
So the question, like asking, like, could he have continued? Well, like, yeah, man, he was ambulatory and he was conscious. He was awake. He could have continued, but why should he? And that point, like, if he can't see out of that eye, or if he can't see well out of that eye, even, then why would he give that advantage to the other guy? Basically, just so that people don't talk mean about him online. He's already the champion.
Yeah.
Why should he continue? Why should he walk back out there, let Ciryl Gane get his warning or his point deducted, knowing I'm compromised now? His chances of knocking me out just got a whole lot better. Like, you're just having even the wrong conversation about that. And so, like, Tom Aspinall's been around this sport long enough. He knew that when he was telling him, hey, I can't see, he knew that fight's going to be stopped. And he knew people on the internet weren't exactly going to thank him for it. Maybe he didn't know the level that it was going to be, but like, he knew that this kind of shit is coming because this is always how it goes. And he made that call because his eye was fucking damaged and it damaged his chances in that fight. Like, that's a completely reasonable thing to do. And to have other people to be like, well, Ciryl Gane had a good 3 minutes or whatever it was in the first round, like better than we expected. Yeah, man, I don't think for a second Tom Aspinall ate a few jabs and was like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes. Like, that's dumb.
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me how we are quick to jump to the conclusion that the UFC heavyweight champion is going to have 4.5 rough minutes and be like, well, I'm out of here. Yes. I got scared. I suddenly got scared in the middle of this fight. Also, man, I've watched this thing twice now. That's a close ass round. It's not like Ciryl Gane is beating the shit out of him. Like, that's a very close round. Tom Aspinall had blood on his face. I guess if that's the deciding factor on who we think won the round, you could clearly give it to Ciryl Gane. But otherwise, I thought it was very even. And it's to think that Tom Aspinall's looking for a way out at that point of the fight is completely asinine. There's only 25 seconds left in the round here. If he finishes this round, goes to his corner, comes out in the second, is still compromised, and gets knocked out by Ciryl Gane, loses his title and everything else, there is a very, very remote possibility that anyone would be sitting here on Tuesday being like, well, Tom Aspinall got poked in the eye super bad, right? We'd be being like, Ciryl Gane is the new champ. What an upset, blah, blah, blah. Terrible for Tom Aspinall. It's not like we would be giving him the benefit of the doubt if that's what he tried to do.
Well, if you'll recall, the thing that happened with that Henry Cejudo Song Yadong thing fight, right? Like, Henry Cejudo got poked in the eye, but it was like between rounds where he basically said like, yeah, no, can't continue on. And we went to the scorecards because it had gone 3 full rounds and he lost the decision on that. Like, there would be no percentage for you in trying to push through. Either you make the decision in that moment, because if you say, yeah, I'm good, then you're basically saying, everybody forget about the eye poke, because they will if you lose. You're not going to be able to come back later and be like, actually, I still can't see, the eye poke was worse than I thought. You got to make, like, that's the system we have, is we tell you to tell us, can you see or not? But it also, everything about the way this one unfolded shows how bullshit we are about that, because they're continuing to ask him, can you see, trying to get a yes. Like, the doctor even seemed to say something where he was just like, I'm going to stop asking him because the things he's saying right now should end the fight. And it's like, what are we doing then?
Yeah.
What, like, you're just going to keep asking him until he gives you the answer you want to hear. And that, again, it just shows you, like, why you'd be a fool not to go out there and poke somebody in the eye in the first round every single fucking time. This is the worst case scenario that happens. Not even a DQ loss, a no contest, and people are talking about the rematch. Like, that's as bad as it gets for committing this foul. So why wouldn't you do it?
We got this one from Shad Rapp asking if we should just move on from this fight and not do a rematch. I think we already talked about that a little bit. We got this one from Lord Seymour Fortescue, who wrote in to say, how much does nationalism come into color commentary in MMA? I struggle to believe that Chael and Anthony would have had the same eye poke criticism for an American fighter. The word color in this email is spelled C-O-L-O-U-R.
Well, that's what we would expect from Captain Sir Seymour John Fortescue, a British naval officer and courtier who is an equerry of the British sovereign and sergeant at arms in the House of Lords.
I don't know if there's nationalism here. I think Chael gets paid to say stuff.
Yeah.
And so he's going to take whatever gives him the most content, whatever gives his content the most legs. And Anthony Smith comes at this from a very particular point of view, right? Because he was at one point lauded, celebrated for not stopping a fight where he would have won and would have claimed the UFC light heavyweight championship. And we all feel basically we feel eternally grateful to Anthony Smith for not making us have 6 months of fucking around, right? For keeping the division moving forward. And so it's possible that his own previous anecdotal experience affects his opinion here.
Yeah, well, and he also did mention where he said something along the lines of like, hey, sometimes you got to go out there and fight with one eye. I did it. I think he was talking about the one where he won a split decision over Ryan Spahn in Singapore. And it's like, excuse me. You hear this stuff from fighters. Dustin Poirier even was out there being like, I would have continued fighting, like they all feel like, okay, I've done it, whatever. And I guess I get what they're saying in a way. For one thing, I would say, one thing Anthony Smith and Chael Sonnen both have in common is that they were never UFC champions. They never had a situation like this where you come in as the champion, you have that belt to lose. A guy has just gouged your eye in the first round of a 5-round fight. And now you're supposed to go out there and continue knowing like you might lose this title and never get it back. And that is, I mean, I'm sure it's always a cage fight, but that is a different situation than you fighting Ryan Spahn on a UFC fight night from Singapore, like that just ain't the same shit. So it's one thing for them to be like, hey, I'm a tough guy. I would have done it. It also seems like we're in the take business. Mm-hmm. We got to have a take. If you're just like, hey, this sucks, it's unfortunate, whatever, that's not a very exciting take. When Chael Sonnen is just preternaturally gifted at this. He knows how to say something in the immediate aftermath of something like this where he's going to instantly become part of the story. And he did. It's exactly what happened. He became a part of this story. He was making the rounds, he's on Ariel's show, he's talking, everybody's paying attention to what Chael, he's in an attention economy. He's got to get viewers and get people to pay attention. And he did it. He managed to become an essential part of this story. So good for him for doing that. I don't know if these guys, if they were actually in the same situation, you're the champion, that your title is on the line, and the guy just went knuckle deep in your eyeball.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised you can put your finger that far into a guy's eye hole and still have there be an eyeball in there. You know, I would think that it would just be a puddle of goo at that point. And at one point, the doctor is taking a look at him, telling Jason Herzog, I'm not worried about the globe. The globe appears to be intact. I'm not worried about the globe. And I was just like, that's gross.
And then is that what we are being like, hey, it's not that bad. His eyeball is still intact. Well, shit. Yeah, man. If that were not the case, then we would not even be having this conversation, I would hope. We would be rushing him to the hospital because his eyeball would have been ruptured. That's the kind of like that's basically saying like he's not even going to lose that eye. So it's fine.
Remember, you're listening to the Co-Main Event podcast proper. This show drops every Tuesday afternoon for free in your timelines and your podcast libraries. But if you want even more of the Co-Main Event, you can find Ben Folks and myself all week over on Patreon. Hit us up at patreon.com/co-main event and get loads of extra audio and video content, as well as access to our official Discord message board where they're talking fights and a lot of other stuff literally all the time. Check us out over there. Co-Main Event. Patreon.com/co-main event. Come on over and join the team. Another way you can support the show is by going to co-mainevent.com and checking out our merchandise shop. We got t-shirts, we got hats, we got hoodies, lots more. Stop by and pick up our best-selling Daddest Man on the Planet coffee mug while we can keep them in stock. We got Dundasso t-shirts over there. Get yourself a Bobby Nux t-shirt. Got a Volcomania shirt. In this instance, you may want to head over and buy one of our shirts for the MMA gods, because let's hope that they are appeased by this past weekend. Just go to our website, co-mainevent.com, and click the link at the top of the page that says shop. As always, we partner with our friend Johnny Ashcroft on the shop. He is a graphic designer from Portland, Oregon. We can't recommend him highly enough for all your design needs. Hit him up at studiosuperconductor.com or on Instagram at Studio Superconductor. And Ben, we've also got a new champion at women's strawweight. That is Mackenzie Dern. We will take some questions about that right after this. All right, Ben, we got this question from Diego Devoli, who writes, sometimes I feel like I'm seeing mirages. The UFC 321 broadcast was commenting on one fight, and I swear I was watching a different one. The broadcasting team was selling Dern's performance as something incredible, like it was Ronda Rousey Chapter 2. But what my eyes saw was a fight where both looked fine, and Dern won just for being more active. I get that Dern is more marketable, but we don't need to invent a performance that never happened. By the way, both of them would get destroyed by Weili Zhang. Can't disagree with the second part there.
I had the same experience, honestly, watching this fight, where I was the commentary was talking like, man, Mackenzie Dern looks great, doing great. And I was like, is she though? Because she's doing okay. It was a close fight. It kind of depended what you think the judges were valuing there. You know, both fighters were landing on the feet, doing some damage at moments on the feet. You don't know how they're going to score the grappling when, you know, Virna Jandiroba is landing some of these takedowns, but isn't always doing a ton with it. Mackenzie Dern, very active off her back. That one, it felt like it was very close, and it definitely didn't feel like I came away going, yeah, fucking A right, Mackenzie Dern is the champ. It still just felt like they chose two people almost at random to go in there and fight for the title in the absence of the division's clear number one. And you were, by a small margin, the better of those two people on the night. That's what it felt like the championship of, frankly. And it didn't do anything to really sell Mackenzie Dern to me. As like, okay, yeah, Mackenzie Dern has made it. Mackenzie Dern's on top of the mountain. Not really, you know, she looked okay. She looked better than she has in some recent fights, but it didn't seem like at any time was I feeling like I'm watching the two best in the world right here. Part of that is just that we all know Zhang Weili is so much better than everybody in the division at this point. It's basically her and then everybody else. But it also seemed like you could have chosen two other fighters to put in here for a vacant title fight, and you could turn around and make the same case. You can just be like, oh, there we go. New champion. How about that? I think people like to see it for Mackenzie Dern because she's been at it for a while. We've had high hopes for her at times, and then those hopes have dimmed. We thought maybe she wasn't going to make it. So she gets a UFC title. She gets to say she's a UFC champ, and it feels kind of good to be like, all right, she got there. She did it. But we all know what this really was. It was a title fight in the sense that we pulled a belt out of the closet and said, somebody got to win it. God damn it. And you were the somebody. But it's not like you fought and scratched and clawed your way to the top of the mountain here. That is not what happened.
Shout out to Laura Sanko, at least midway through the last round of this thing was in fact like, I have no idea who's going to win this. She said out loud, which I thought was great. Someone being honest on the UFC broadcast. This was just not a very exciting or inspiring fight, man. Like, regardless of what you think about Virna Jandiroba or Mackenzie Dern, I don't know that anybody came out of this jacked for the Mackenzie Dern era at women's strawweight. I don't necessarily know that we'll be talking about this title fight 2 weeks from now, or even 1 week from now. And we gotta be real that what the UFC did here was put Mackenzie Dern in a title fight against a person that she had already defeated once, and a person where she came into this fight as the betting favorite. So it's not like she went out there and pulled off some dramatic victory in jaw-dropping fashion. She kind of eked one out over Virna Jandiroba, and now she's going to have a cup of coffee with the belt, and we'll see what happens after that. Weili Zhang going to fight Valentina Shevchenko coming up here at UFC 322 on November 15th. So that's just a couple of weeks away. And depending on what happens there, I'd be paying attention. If I was Mackenzie Dern, I'd watch that fight.
Yeah, you'd keep an eye on it.
Mm-hmm. I'd keep one eye. That night. Yep. I'd keep Tom Aspinall's one working eye on that fight just to see what might be the future of the division that I am currently the champion of. Balls Deep wrote in to say, Ben, we were robbed of that split decision bet.
Don't I know it? Don't I know it?
I wish we had a Dana cam because I bet he was staring daggers and possibly doing the throat slit gesture at those judges after the 5th round. Now, see, I don't know, people who aren't on the Patreon will not know about your love for betting on any women's fight to go to a split or majority decision. But the place that you fucked up this week was you should have gone with the heavyweight fight. You should have bet on the heavyweight fight to end in split or majority decision, because that, you would have won that one.
What? Well, that was not the heavyweight fight that I really had my eye on in any sense. But I was feeling fucking good about this bet, man.
It could have easily been.
We're headed into the 5th round. I was like, I don't know. Not only did it look like a close fight, it looked like the kind of close fight where a judge who values this is going to see it for this fighter. A judge who values that will see it for the other fighter. And that's all you need. All you need is one judge to dissent and go the other way. And I felt like all the pieces were in play. All the ingredients were there. I felt like even though this bet didn't hit, my thinking, my analysis was sound. And to say the least, I am not deterred from this bet. I will make this bet again in the future. I feel like I should have won it here. And damn it, I really needed it too. I really could have used it.
Virna Jandiroba either came damn close or did tie or set a record for takedowns in, I think, women's strawweight championship fights. So it did come down to what you were scoring over, one aspect over another. And she wasn't necessarily being passive with those takedowns either. She was trying to do work while she was on top. So I do think it could have gone either way.
She was trying, but I do think Mackenzie Dern really benefited from, she has an active guard when she's on bottom. She's not staying there. She's not letting you get comfortable on top. She's always doing something. And I think that some of those takedowns, I agree, if we're reading the unified rules right, probably shouldn't count for much because you weren't able to really do anything. If anything, you were the one trying to play catch up once it hit the ground, and you're trying not to get fucking hammer fisted in the face, or at times just straight up kicked right in your chin.
Speaking of Dana White cam, that Balls Deep refers to here, this man have Hasbulla on his lap? Turn this. Is Hasbulla sitting on Dana White's knee here? Did I see that correctly?
I did not see that, and I'm glad I didn't see that.
Either that or he had his own chair pulled up real close to Dana White.
Where are we at on that Hasbulla contract, by the way? They signed him to like a 5-year fucking deal. Like, I think he's still under contract doing whatever it is Hasbulla does for the UFC. Insane.
Just sometimes I wonder if Dana White is if he ever looks around and thinks to himself, how the fuck did I get here, man? Like, I live a deeply weird life now. So I just wonder. I'm trying to see if I could go to the internet and get some confirmation on whether my eyes were deceiving me or whether or not Dana White had a very small person in his seat with him.
It does seem at times like, for cultural reasons, shit gets weirder for Dana White when he goes over to have one of these fights in the Middle East. Like, gonna have to refer to some grown men as Your Excellency or whatever. We're gonna have to hold hands with some men while we walk along in friendship. Might have to put Hasbulla on your lap like you're Santa Claus and he's telling you what he wants for Christmas. You know, shit can get weird.
Next question this week comes to us from, I lost my place here, pardon me. Jason Pian and Zykel Minkus watch Joe Pyfer get hair plugs in Turkey.
Okay. That's a lot.
Jason, I'm going to tell you right now, rein it in, bud.
You're doing a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit too much.
He writes, Hamdi Abdel-Wahab really showcased the UFC's other heavyweight division. He had his opponent flat on his stomach for 14 minutes and couldn't finish him. The most interesting part of that fight was seeing Chris Barnett's whole ass.
That wasn't the whole ass. I'll tell you this much. You think that was the whole ass because you don't know how much ass Chris Barnett really has. That wasn't the whole ass. There's still a lot of the ass, but it wasn't the whole ass.
You know what? I love Chris Barnett. Everybody knows that. But is there a person in the UFC where it is more clear that they probably should not be there?
I mean, yeah, he shouldn't be there because he should be somewhere else doing something more fun. There's more fun work out there. Chris Barnett's skills, such as they are in all facets, could be put to better use outside the UFC. If he had some kind of joint deal with, like, you know, BKFC, Fight Circus, like, Chris Barnett can do, he can be a crowd pleaser. But we don't need to be doing this. Having Chris Barnett go out there to lose to Hamdi Abdel-Wahab on the fucking prelims in Abu Dhabi at 8 o'clock in the morning. That is not a good use of his talents. My children saw this. I was putting this on in the morning. My children were just like, who is this guy? I had to go back and show him with the head kick, and he does the flip celebration, show him his dancing and pre-fight, and they were like, okay, this guy's awesome. I love this guy. And I was like, I know. We just need to find some stuff that plays to his strengths. This is a misuse of that man.
The other half of the question from Jason Pian and Zykel Minkus watch Joe Pyfer get hair plugs in Turkey reads, on a more serious note, how terrifying would it be if Nasrat Haqparast was the first guy to be killed in the UFC? Is it possible to die from a head kick? This was one of those fights that made me question why I watch this sport. Yeah, you can die of a head kick.
Yeah.
Because it's basically like someone took a big heavy log and hit you in the head with it.
Yeah. Could you die of being hit in the head with a baseball bat really hard? Yeah. That's what it is, basically. So you absolutely could. That was a scary one, man. And you know
really
what?
Was.
I know that this is sort of like UFC policy with this, where it's like when a guy is down like that for a long time and we're a little bit worried about it, the policy seems to be keep the camera off of him. But there are times where you make it seem worse that way. It's like I remember watching something where David Fincher was talking about his approach to directing movies, and he was saying about the scene in Fight Club where Edward Norton just absolutely destroys Jared Leto because he wanted to destroy something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I realize you can only get so much out of a shot of watching this guy absolutely beat the shit out of him. At some point, I get more out of showing you the horrified reactions of the people watching, showing their faces change, showing them take a step back. And that's kind of what you saw here when we're doing like the announcement. As you can see, the dude who just won the fight, who landed the head kick, is shaken up. He's looking over there off camera at where the dude is down. He is definitely affected by it. And it's like, you make it seem worse kind of by trying not to show too much of that, but instead everybody else we can see who can look and see it for themselves in real life seems deeply affected by it. Then we go, Jesus Christ, how bad is it? You know? And this is the thing too, like we were talking at times about how there's a different experience that you get going to live events and watching on TV. One of the different experiences is when you're at the live event, you sometimes get a sense, oh, sometimes these guys are way more fucked up than I realized because the camera didn't show it to me.
Yeah.
When I can sit there and watch it, sometimes you see these guys are down for a while. When they're trying to get up, they're really fucked up. When they're walking out of there, they're really fucked up. Like you get a sense we are not playing games in there. This shit is for real.
Yeah. When you go to a UFC live, you can really see who is hitting the other one hard. And if you're close enough, you can hear the sound of it, which is it's a little it's arresting when that happens. Next question this week comes to us from Petro Sivanksiva.
Nailed it.
We'll probably have to look that one up. Yo, Benji. That's you. He's talking to you.
Okay.
Congrats on the recent nuptials. Big fan, etc. Whatever. Back in the day, you used to beat the drum for Andy Foster and the CSAC being one of the only good ones who was trying to make a positive change in the sport. And I think you were right at the time. You still feeling that way about this love child of Billy Corgan and Dana White looking motherfucker? That's not fair. That's not fair there at the end.
That is a little bit of a low blow. I think maybe this was supposed to come from Petero Sivanasiva.
Okay.
Some sort of famous Fijian Australian rugby player. He's a big boy. I tell you, look this guy up.
Mm-hmm.
Might want to watch some of this guy's highlights later because it looks like this guy runs some people over. Okay, look, I do still think that when it comes to like running a commission and trying to like make some improvements in the sport, I do still think Andy Foster is doing much better than basically all the other heads of the athletic commissions. I also don't think that's the highest bar in the world to clear. I think that there's definitely been certain things like Andy Foster was a fighter. We've heard and from people that Andy Foster is still a menacing grappler when he gets on the mats. He has a perspective on that a lot of these other guys don't have. He was one of the first guys I ever heard who was actually trying to do something about evaluating and assessing referees and judges and not using the ones that keep fucking up. None of the other athletic commissions need to be doing it at all. They were just like, we're going to keep hiring these judges, whether it's Douglas Crosby or somebody else, because that's the guy we know. We know his phone number. We'll know his show up when we call. So we don't care how many fights he fucks up. He's going to keep doing it. Andy Foster was one of the first people who was actually had like creating a system to deal with that. When it comes to this sort of big picture stuff where it's like UFC, its parent company, the power brokers in the sport come to California and say, hey, we want power slap in there. We want a rules change to the Ali Act. I guess there's a part of me that goes, maybe you don't get to be the executive director of the California State Athletic Commission if you don't know when to let the powerful people tell you what the fuck to do. because I agree. Like some of this stuff, I'm disappointed to see it when I see them just basically being like, yeah, hey, this thing that the most powerful and wealthiest people controlling this sport have decided is good, we're on board. You don't even have to convince us. We'll show up to the meetings on board. Clearly, we'll show up to the meetings having all already talked about it and agreed that it's going to go a certain way. Honestly, anytime all the powerful people are like, we want to make our rules change, it ain't because they're worried about the little guy. It ain't because they're like, we want to make a rules change to make it more fair for everybody else who is not us. No, they want to consolidate their power. They are making the rules change to benefit themselves, and they're already the richest and most powerful people in the sport. So whatever rules change they want is probably going to be bad for the rank and file. And, he got on board with that just like everybody else did. It's a bummer to see. I still think that if you're just looking around and being like, if he's not one of the better athletic commission directors, then tell me who is, because there's not many heroes to be found out there in that field.
Yeah, there were a couple of people who came out in favor of this Ali Act change that I was surprised about, and Andy Foster was one of them. And I hope that I'm not slandering her by saying this, but I thought I saw that Sharice David also came out in support of it.
Very early on, she was one of the people to offer support for it. And it just seemed like, all right, so we're all kind of kissing the ring here, huh? Yeah. We all realize where the bread is actually buttered. I appreciate the hell out of Matt Brown, the big homie Matt Brown, basically calling in and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Like, at least somebody said it, Also, Andy Foster, I think, went on Ariel's show and he was like, this idea that boxers are getting paid so much more than MMA fighters is a fairy tale. I've seen the numbers. And it's like, man, maybe if we're talking about undercard guys, but we've seen the numbers too. Fucking Floyd Mayweather was making so much goddamn money, Chad. He wants his friends, his whole entourage. They went to Atlanta, partied for a weekend, bought a Mercedes to drive around in just for when they were in Atlanta, then left it at the airport when they went to fly home to Las Vegas. And it wasn't until a couple weeks later where somebody went, yeah, whatever happened to that Mercedes? That's how much fucking money Floyd Mayweather was making. No MMA fighter ever in the history of the goddamn sport has come anywhere close to that kind of money from fighting. So we've also seen the numbers. I get it if you're going to be like, hey, the undercard guys in boxing, sometimes, an undercard guy in the UFC might make more than that. I absolutely believe that. However, when it comes to just how they're splitting up the revenue, there's a big, big difference. We all know that by now. That's not even a discussion we're still having.
So I looked at the video evidence here.
We're going to talk about Hezbollah. Is that what we're back on?
Of course we are. I had to go back to see if my eyes were deceiving me. During the Tom Aspinall, Ciryl Gane introductions, behind Tom Aspinall in the crowd, I'll just say they're sitting really close to each other.
Okay.
Dana White and Hezbollah. Hezbollah may have pulled up a stool right next to Dana White, but they're definitely buddying up during this fight. So I stand by my statement.
We got them signed to that contract. We might as well get their money's worth.
God, how would they ever get their money's worth? Ryan writes in to say, long time, first time. I was struck by something while listening to Laura talk about the amazing atmosphere for fights in the UAE. It means Laura Sanko, I believe. Why hasn't that region produced many or really any elite mixed martial artists? They've had to adopt all the Dagestanis as their de facto quote-unquote home fighters because of the religious factors. It seems with all the resources at their disposal and the obvious desire to win, or the obvious desire to sports wash their image and the national pride inherent in claiming UFC titles, they'd be motivated to create their own. I'm picturing an Ivan Drago-esque scenario. Anyway, during listener mail, I'd be interested to listen to your unfettered discourse of this topic. Thank you. And signed, a guy who doesn't exactly understand the formula for coming up with an obscure pop culture reference for a name.
Okay. I mean, there's plenty of people, as you can see, who are trying the formula and not getting it exactly right themselves. So don't let that stop you. As for the question, it's not as if it's super easy to just decide to have a world-class fighter come from your country. You know?
Yeah.
It's not just like, hey, we found out about the UFC 10 years ago. We're excited about it. Let's create one around here. Who we got? It's a champion. You know, I mean, like there's good fighters who can come from all over. We've seen it, but it also does take some time. And the countries that come, like I remember doing a story a long time ago where people like this coach was saying how the UFC and a lot of MMA promotions have been talking about sort of a Russian invasion, all these Russian fighters. And he was the one pointing out where he was like, it's not a Russian invasion. It's the Caucasus region invasion. And he was just mentioning like how there's such a strong wrestling and combat sports culture. And he mentioned Dagestan, Chechnya, Georgia on the other side of the Caucasus Mountains, like where Merab comes from, where Ilya Toporia's family comes from, all that kind of stuff. Like you do get a really good head start if you have that base that you're teaching children some form of combat sports that they grow up in.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, it can be hard to sort of create that.
I would be lying if I sat here and told you what the priorities of the government of Abu Dhabi or the United Arab Emirates are. I don't have the international relations background to tell you that. But I wonder if there is just a difference in investment between, hey, we'd like to pay for the UFC to come here and do some events for to improve our image, and maybe we make some money and have these big events at the arena that we built. There's a difference between that and, hey, we want to make a grassroots investment in what it would take to like build a generation of high level MMA fighters, because that's basically what it would take to find someone to be a champion, right? You're not going to like pick a guy off the street and be like, this guy is our MMA champion. Like you'd have to have some options to choose from. You'd have to create a pool, a population of fighters from which to try to build a number of like UFC caliber fighters, let alone champions. So those seem like two different investments to me.
Yeah.
And one would have to be made because I would assume some singular person would be very, very interested in making it a reality, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you're right that like there's a big difference, for example, between going over and buying a soccer team in the English Premier League and creating and sustaining for years your own youth and young adult soccer development programs in the hopes that 25 years from now you have a great soccer player that comes from your country. Like that's kind of what that takes. You can't just be like, all right, everybody, we're building a bunch of gyms, get in there and become world-class fucking MMA fighters. This is just not really going to work that way, especially when you're going up against these people where like, man, can you imagine what it takes to be like one of the toughest dudes to come out of Dagestan?
Yeah.
They're basically over there. Everything we've learned about the culture through MMA fighters and everything would have you believe that they're inspecting infants for weakness to see if they should throw them off the cliff like the Spartans did or something. Like you come out of that one and you're one of the toughest, best fighters in your generation out of there, then yeah, you're probably one of the best in the world, because that is a culture where you have come up with that from a very young age. It's the same way, honestly, it's the same thing that we see regionally here with wrestling in the United States. I was talking about this with people when I was working on that story about women's wrestling and the growth of women's wrestling in North America. And they were like, wrestling is still very regional, even though it doesn't necessarily have to be, because it's one of the sports you need the least for. You would like to have a mat and you would like to have like singlets and shoes, but you don't even need all that necessarily. You could do it out there in a field. You could do it in a sand pit. You can learn this stuff very easily, but then it's just sort of like where there is a wrestling culture, wrestling will thrive. Where there's not, it sometimes struggles to gain a foothold and to grow. It's why, like, why should Iowa be a hotbed of wrestling in the United States as opposed to, Vermont? because they fucking do it in Iowa. They love it. They've been doing it for a long time. They're really into it. They put their kids into it from a young age. They develop talent, and there's a cultural push to do it. And there's just not in some of those other places. Changing that is a long, long process. And it's not as easy as just like, we got a bunch of money. We want this thing. We're going to buy that thing.
You ever notice how many top level wrestlers at this point had dads who were really good wrestlers? It's kind of like that. Like, it's kind of a cultural thing. It is not a coincidence that Gable Stevenson's name is Gable Dan Stevenson, right? Like, somebody knew what they were doing when they gave that kid that name and where he has advanced to today. It's like, look at Zuckerberg. I think Zuckerberg's got the cash if he wanted to start an MMA team and produce his own championship fighters. Hell yeah. He could do it probably without missing the pocket change. Mm-hmm. He could do it. He loves jiu-jitsu, but he's not doing that from what we know. He loves Mackenzie Dern. He picked a fighter who was already the championship level person. It was like, that's my fighter. Mackenzie
I'll tell you
Dern.
what, when it all goes to shit, Mackenzie Dern probably has her own room in the Hawaiian bunker that Mark Zuckerberg is building to protect himself from all of us.
But does Mackenzie Dern's husband have?
Oh man, sorry, we're just running out of space. We can just only take Mackenzie.
Full up. All right, that's going to do it for the Co-Main Event podcast this week. We'll be over on the Patreon page the rest of the days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Come join us over there, patreon.com/co-main event. We do have fun. We'd love to see you over there. If you do, we'll see you tomorrow. If you don't, we'll see you right back here next week. Thanks for the support. We appreciate all of the listening. As for right now, we are done. We are through. We are out. You ever think about how many other Marabs there probably are over there in Georgia? There's probably a bunch of Marabs, man. A bunch of little Marabs running around over there, just like maybe not quite as Marab is.
Honestly, just in the last 6 months, ICE might have kicked out 6-7 Marabs from this country. We could have had so many more Marabs if we were just taking it a little easier on the immigration stuff, We probably got Marabs sitting in detention cells right now somewhere in Queens.
It's probably 150 Marabs in Georgia right now just being like, gosh, I should have Marabbed a little harder.
Well, see, that's the problem is that for your ratio of Marabs is going to be thrown off a little bit by some of them are going to Marab too hard and they're going to be dead or in prison.
That's a fine line.
That's a given.
Got to walk a fine line when it comes to Marabbing.